Focusing on yourself goes far beyond the surface level idea of self-care that has become so popularized today. It's easy to associate self-care with things like bubble baths, face masks, or occasional treats. And while these can be delightful and relaxing, they're often just small moments of escape rather than opportunities for deep connection with ourselves. True focus on ourselves begins with self-reflection, which is a much deeper, more honest practice. This kind of focus invites us to explore who we are beneath the layers of expectations, achievements, and daily routines, and to come face to face with the parts of ourselves that may need understanding, healing, or simply recognition. Self-reflection is about asking questions that take us below the surface. What do I truly feel about my life right now? What beliefs am I carrying about myself that might be holding me back? Am I doing what I love, or am I caught up in what I think I should be doing? These are questions that don't have easy answers, and they might bring up feelings or thoughts that are challenging to confront. This isn't about judgment or criticism, though. It's about curiosity and care. Self-reflection means sitting with yourself with an open heart and mind, not to fix what's wrong, but understand and accept the person you are right now, with all your strengths and weaknesses. Reflecting deeply on ourselves requires a willingness to get uncomfortable. It's tempting to stay at the surface, to look only at the parts of ourselves we like or feel proud of. But if we want to grow, we have to also examine the parts of us that we may not be proud of, the fears, the insecurities, the memories of times we fell short of our own expectations. Self-reflection is not about dwelling in these moments. It's about seeing them, learning from them, and understanding how they shape the way we move through the world today. Often, our deepest fears or past hurts influence how we approach relationships, careers, and even our sense of self-worth. When we take the time to truly examine these parts of ourselves, we create the space to make different choices, ones that align with who we really are and who we want to be. This deep reflection is also a gateway to self-compassion. When we understand our own struggles and our own journeys, we start to see ourselves with more kindness. We learn to treat ourselves with the same empathy we might offer a friend who's going through something hard. Instead of harshly criticizing ourselves for our mistakes or perceived shortcomings, we can approach these aspects of ourselves with patience and gentleness. Self-compassion, born out of honest reflection, gives us the resilience to try again when we fail, to stand back up when life knocks us down, and to keep striving for what feels true and meaningful to us. Focusing on ourselves through self-reflection also helps us to set boundaries that protect our energy and allow us to be fully present for what matters most. When we know who we are and what we need, we become more willing to say no to things that drain us or pull us away from our values. This might mean reevaluating how we spend our time or reconsidering relationships that aren't supportive of our growth. It's not about building walls around ourselves or rejecting others, but about making conscious choices that honor our well-being. When we do this, we're actually better able to be present with others because we're coming from a place of fullness rather than depletion. Self-reflection also opens us up to our own potential and passions. Often when we look deeply at ourselves, we uncover dreams or desires we may have buried under layers of obligation or practicality. Maybe it's something you've always wanted to pursue but have been too afraid to try. Maybe there's a part of you that longs for creativity, adventure, or connection in ways that haven't fit into your life before. Self-reflection is a way of reconnecting with those parts of yourself that may have gone quiet but are still very much alive. When you truly know yourself, you're better able to make choices that align with your values and bring you genuine fulfillment. And while this journey of self-reflection is personal, it has an impact on the world around you. When you're connected to yourself, you show up differently in your relationships. You're more authentic, more open, and more willing to be vulnerable. Others feel that energy and are often encouraged to be more authentic in return. By focusing on yourself, you're not just improving your own life. You're creating a ripple effect that touches everyone you interact with. In the end, self-reflection is not something you do just once. It's a lifelong practice. Just as we evolve and change over time, so too does our understanding of who we are. Self-reflection is about staying connected to that evolving self, about continuously learning, accepting, and honoring the person we're becoming. It's not always easy and it's not always comfortable, but it's one of the most powerful ways to live a life that feels true to you. When we choose to focus on ourselves through self-reflection, we begin to shed the layers of expectation and pressure that don't serve us. We become more grounded in who we really are and more courageous in following a path that feels right. In a world that constantly demands our attention, taking time to focus on ourselves is a radical act of self-love and empowerment. It's a commitment to living deeply, authentically, and fully. Living authentically means embracing and expressing who you are, without hiding behind the roles you play, the expectations others may have, or even the limiting beliefs you hold about yourself. It means showing up fully, flaws, strengths, quirks, and all, without feeling the need to apologize for any of it. Living authentically doesn't mean you're perfect or that you have everything figured out. In fact, it often involves admitting when you don't. It's about being honest with yourself and others, staying true to your values, and allowing your choices and actions to reflect what genuinely matters to you. At the core of authenticity is self-awareness. To live authentically, you must first know who you are. This self-discovery isn't a one-time exercise. It's an ongoing process of reflecting, questioning, and getting curious about your feelings, your motivations, and your reactions to the world around you. It requires looking inward, examining not just what you do, but why you do it. Authenticity asks that you dig deep and understand what truly matters to you. Not what society or your family or friends say should matter. What lights you up? What makes you feel alive, engaged, and fulfilled? When you start to connect with those answers, you gain a clearer sense of self that can guide you in every area of life. Living authentically also involves having the courage to be vulnerable. So often we wear masks or armor to protect ourselves, afraid that others might judge or reject us if they see who we really are. But this armor can become a barrier, isolating us from genuine connection and keeping us from experiencing life fully. When we dare to be vulnerable, to show up as we are, even when that means admitting our struggles, our insecurities, or our imperfections, we make space for real connection with others. Authenticity means saying, "This is who I am," and trusting that those who truly matter will accept you as you are. Vulnerability might feel risky, but it's essential to building relationships based on trust and respect. Being authentic also means embracing imperfection. Society often encourages us to present a polished, idealized version of ourselves, but real life is messy. No one has it all together, and trying to appear as if you do can be exhausting. Living authentically means acknowledging and accepting your flaws, mistakes, and limitations. It means recognizing that you're human, and that it's okay not to have all the answers or to be the best at everything. By allowing yourself to be imperfect, you give yourself the freedom to grow, to learn, and to keep evolving. In fact, some of the most meaningful growth happens when we're willing to look at our mistakes, learn from them, and keep moving forward. To live authentically is also to be guided by your values. Knowing what you stand for gives you a compass to navigate life's challenges and decisions. It's easy to get swept up in the opinions and expectations of others, to let yourself be defined by external measures of success, or to make choices that seem right on paper, but don't resonate with your inner self. Living in alignment with your values might mean making choices that go against the grain or that others don't understand. But it's in these moments that you're truly honoring yourself. It might mean setting boundaries, letting go of things that don't serve you, or pursuing passions that others don't understand. Whatever it looks like, living according to your values gives your life a sense of purpose and direction that feels grounded and meaningful. Another essential part of living authentically is embracing your uniqueness. Each of us has a combination of talents, perspectives, and experiences that make us who we are. Society often pressures us to conform, to fit into neat boxes, or to follow prescribed paths. But when you live authentically, you allow yourself to step outside of those boxes and celebrate what makes you different. You embrace your quirks, your passions, your ideas, even if they don't align with what others might expect or understand. When you let yourself be who you truly are, you not only enrich your own life, but you also inspire others to do the same. Your authenticity gives others permission to show up as they are, creating a ripple effect that encourages more genuine, honest connections. Living authentically isn't always easy, especially in a world that sometimes rewards conformity and punishes those who stand out. But the reward of authenticity is a life that feels deeply fulfilling because it's a life that's true. When you live authentically, you feel a sense of peace and satisfaction that comes from knowing you're not hiding or compromising yourself to please others. You know that the relationships you build are based on who you really are, and that the success you achieve is aligned with what truly matters to you. Authenticity might not always lead to an easy path, but it leads to a life that feels real, meaningful, and grounded in truth. Ultimately, living authentically is a journey, not a destination. There will be times when it's challenging to stay true to yourself, times when you might question who you are, what you want. And that's okay. Authenticity isn't about having all the answers. It's about staying committed to seeking them, staying open to change, and being willing to grow. It's about honoring yourself enough to live a life that reflects your values, your passions, and your truth, even if that path looks different from the one others expect you to follow. Living authentically means choosing every day to be yourself fully and trusting that who you are is enough. Self-compassion is an act of kindness toward oneself that often gets misunderstood as selfishness. In a world that emphasizes achievement, sacrifice, and outward appearances, self-compassion can feel counterintuitive. Many of us are raised to believe that prioritizing our own needs or giving ourselves grace is somehow indulgent or even selfish. However, self-compassion is far from selfishness in reality. It is one of the most empowering and healing choices we can make, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us. By embracing self-compassion, we create a solid foundation of resilience, empathy, and inner peace that benefits both our own well-being and the relationships we hold dear. At its core, self-compassion is the practice of treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would offer a loved one. It means that when we encounter failures, challenges, or moments of insecurity, we don't immediately default to self-criticism. Instead, we approach ourselves with empathy and patience, acknowledging that everyone experiences setbacks, doubts, and imperfections. This isn't an excuse to ignore growth opportunities or avoid responsibility, but rather a way to respond to ourselves in a way that fosters healthy growth and healing. One of the biggest misconceptions about self-compassion is that it leads to complacency. Some people worry that being kind to themselves in difficult times will mean they won't work as hard, won't improve, or won't strive to reach their full potential. However, research shows that self-compassion actually motivates us to improve. When we're kind to ourselves, we create an internal environment where we feel safe to take risks, make mistakes, and learn. We become less fearful of failure because we know that we'll respond with understanding rather than self-punishment. This compassion-based approach to motivation is far more sustainable than one based on self-criticism, which can quickly erode our self-esteem and leave us feeling stuck or defeated. Self-compassion also allows us to set boundaries that honor our well-being. Often the fear of being perceived as selfish keeps us from saying no when we need to or from setting limits that protect our energy. But when we understand that compassion for ourselves is just as valid as compassion for others, we start to see boundaries as essential rather than indulgent. Self-compassion enables us to recognize when we need rest, when we're feeling overwhelmed, or when something doesn't align with our values. Setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out or refusing to give. It's about making choices that allow us to show up as our best, healthiest selves. This, in turn, strengthens our ability to be present and supportive in our relationships. Embracing self-compassion also leads to greater resilience in the face of adversity. Life will always bring moments of disappointment, loss, and uncertainty. When we respond to ourselves with harsh judgment during these times, we add a layer of suffering to what is already painful. But with self-compassion, we can acknowledge our pain without amplifying it. We can remind ourselves that struggle is a natural part of life, and we can choose to approach those moments with gentleness. This compassionate response helps us process difficult emotions more effectively and gives us the strength to move forward without becoming hardened or detached. Furthermore, self-compassion enhances our relationships by teaching us empathy from the inside out. When we learn to treat ourselves kindly, we become more attuned to the needs, struggles, and humanity of others. We become better equipped to understand that others to face their own challenges, doubts, and insecurities. Rather than judging others or feeling competitive, we can offer the same understanding and patience we extend to ourselves. Self-compassion fosters a sense of connectedness and belonging as we recognize that we're all part of a shared human experience. By accepting our own imperfections, we find it easier to accept those of others, creating stronger, more authentic connections. A crucial part of self-compassion is challenging the inner critic, the voice inside us that tells us we're not good enough, that we don't deserve kindness, or that we're somehow inadequate. The inner critic often emerges from societal standards, past experiences, or our own expectations, and it can be relentless. Self-compassion doesn't mean ignoring this voice. Rather, it means listening to it with curiosity and responding with kindness. When the inner critic surfaces, we can ask ourselves, would I speak to a friend this way? By challenging these harsh thoughts and replacing them with compassionate responses, we create a new pattern of self-talk that uplifts us instead of tearing us down. Self-compassion also requires self-acceptance, an acknowledgement that who we are right now is enough. This doesn't mean we won't strive for growth or improvement, but it does mean that our worth isn't conditional on our achievements or perfection. We are worthy of kindness simply because we are human. When we embrace this idea, we free ourselves from the need to constantly prove ourselves, and we start to enjoy life more fully. This acceptance cultivates a deep sense of inner peace, as we realize that we don't have to be constantly better to be worthy of our own kindness and care. Choosing self-compassion isn't always easy. It often requires us to unlearn patterns of harshness and self-judgment that may feel familiar, but with practice, self-compassion becomes a natural way of being. It allows us to live with greater ease, joy, and resilience, far from being selfish. Self-compassion is a gift we give not only to ourselves, but to everyone in our lives. When we are kinder to ourselves, we are better able to contribute to the world in a way that is genuine, loving, and grounded. In a culture that equates self-worth with productivity and self-sacrifice, self-compassion is a revolutionary act. It allows us to reclaim our worth independent of external validation, and to live lives that are not defined by how much we give or achieve, but by how well we honor our own humanity. Self-compassion invites us to see ourselves as whole and worthy, to approach our own hearts with warmth, and to create a life that feels nurturing and meaningful. It is the ultimate expression of self-care, reminding us that we too are deserving of the same compassion we so freely offer others. Setting boundaries and prioritizing our own needs are essential practices for living a balanced and fulfilling life, yet they're often overlooked or misunderstood. Many of us struggle with boundary setting because we worry about disappointing others, appearing selfish, or coming across as unkind. We've been taught that caring for others is admirable, and while that's certainly true, caring for others without caring for ourselves leads to burnout and resentment. In truth, setting boundaries and prioritizing our needs is not about rejecting others or being selfish. It's about self-respect, creating healthy relationships and preserving our well-being so that we can show up more fully for those we care about. Boundaries are essentially limits that we set to protect our time, energy, and emotional well-being. They help us communicate our needs clearly and define what is and isn't acceptable in our interactions. Boundaries allow us to manage our own energy, which is essential because without them we risk becoming drained, overwhelmed, and unable to function at our best. Imagine boundaries as a fence around a garden. This fence isn't there to keep others out permanently, but to protect what's inside. We need to nourish and care for our garden, our inner self, so that we can blossom and bring our best selves into the world. Setting boundaries begins with self-awareness. We have to know what our needs are and understand our limits. This requires us to pay attention to what drains us, what energizes us, and what feels right or wrong in different situations. Often we experience discomfort when our boundaries are crossed. We may feel resentment, frustration, or even guilt. These feelings are important signals indicating that something is out of alignment and needs to be addressed. If we ignore them, we may end up overcommitted, exhausted, or resentful. Taking the time to identify what's causing us discomfort or stress is the first step in understanding where we need to set boundaries. Once we know where our boundaries are, the next step is communicating them clearly and kindly. This can feel intimidating, especially if we're not used to asserting our needs. However, boundary setting doesn't have to be harsh or confrontational. It can be as simple as saying, I'm unable to take on that extra project right now, or I need some time to recharge this weekend. These statements allow us to be honest about our needs without putting down or blaming others. In fact, when we communicate our boundaries openly, we create stronger relationships because the people around us understand where we stand and what we need to thrive. Prioritizing our needs goes hand in hand with setting boundaries. Too often we're conditioned to put everyone else's needs before our own, whether it's at work, in our families, or in our friendships. We may fear that if we focus on ourselves, we'll let others down or appear self-centered. But prioritizing our needs doesn't mean ignoring others or neglecting our responsibilities. It means recognizing that we can give from an empty cup. By tending to our physical, emotional, and mental needs, we ensure that we have the energy, resilience, and capacity to support others meaningfully. Taking time to recharge is a critical aspect of prioritizing our needs. Rest is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Our bodies and minds need time to recover from daily stress, and ignoring this need can lead to burnout. Unfortunately, we often feel guilty for taking time to rest, especially if we live in cultures that value constant productivity. But rest allows us to reconnect with ourselves, recenter, and approach life's challenges with a clear mind and a full heart. When we prioritize rest and self-care, we're better able to be present, engaged, and supportive in our relationships, work, and communities. Prioritizing our needs also involves listening to our inner voice and trusting our own judgment. This can mean saying no to opportunities that don't align with our values, or saying yes to things that may require us to step outside our comfort zones but that feel deeply meaningful. Honoring our needs means allowing ourselves to pursue our passions, take time for self-reflection, or engage in activities that bring us joy. By following our inner compass, we make choices that contribute to our well-being and help us lead a life that feels authentic and satisfying. Another essential aspect of setting boundaries and prioritizing needs is letting go of the guilt and fear that often come with these practices. Guilt is a common reaction when we start setting boundaries, especially if we're not used to doing so. We may worry about how others will react or feel we're being unkind. However, setting boundaries is an act of self-respect. And it's important to remember that prioritizing our needs doesn't mean we don't care about others. In fact, setting healthy boundaries often leads to stronger, more respectful relationships. When we're clear about our limits, we reduce the risk of miscommunication, misunderstandings, and resentment. Setting boundaries and prioritizing needs also model healthy behavior for those around us. When we honor our needs, we encourage others to do the same. This is especially important if we're in leadership roles or have people who look up to us. Demonstrating that it's okay to take breaks, to ask for support, and to say no when necessary creates a culture where others feel empowered to take care of their own well-being. In this way, setting boundaries isn't just beneficial for us, it's a gift we give to our communities, showing that self-care and respect are foundational for balanced, fulfilling relationships. Ultimately, setting boundaries and prioritizing our needs is about living with intention. It's about creating a life that aligns with our values and respects our limits, one where we can thrive instead of just survive. Growth through self-acceptance is a journey of embracing who we are at every stage of our lives, recognizing that each part of us, our strengths, weaknesses, its successes and failures, is essential to our growth. Self-acceptance is the foundation for true, lasting change because it allows us to view ourselves with compassion and honesty, free from the pressure to fit into anyone else's expectations or standards. When we accept ourselves as we are, we create a nurturing environment that fosters resilience, self-awareness, and a genuine drive for improvement that comes from within, rather than from external pressures. Self-acceptance begins with acknowledging that we are enough as we are right now. In a world that constantly encourages self-improvement, the idea of being enough can feel foreign, even uncomfortable. However, accepting ourselves doesn't mean we have to stop wanting to grow or improve. Rather, it's about recognizing that our worth isn't dependent on our achievements, appearance, or status. It means understanding that we have inherent value simply by being who we are. From this place of self-worth, we can pursue personal growth not because we feel we are lacking, but because we genuinely want to expand, learn, and evolve. Embracing self-acceptance also requires us to let go of self-judgment. Many of us have an inner critic that's quick to point out our perceived flaws, mistakes, and limitations. This inner voice can be harsh, reinforcing the belief that we're not good enough or that we need to be perfect to be worthy of love and respect. Self-acceptance challenges this narrative by encouraging us to replace self-judgment with self-compassion. When we make mistakes or fall short, we can choose to respond with kindness rather than criticism. This compassionate response allows us to see our failures as opportunities for growth rather than as defining characteristics of who we are. One of the most powerful aspects of self-acceptance is that it helps us build a realistic view of ourselves. Instead of seeing ourselves through an idealized lens or comparing ourselves to others, we learn to recognize and appreciate our unique strengths and abilities, as well as our limitations. This realistic perspective helps us approach challenges with humility and honesty. We can acknowledge areas where we need support or improvement without feeling inadequate or ashamed. When we accept both our strengths and our areas for growth, we're better equipped to make positive changes in a sustainable way. This self-acceptance also brings a sense of peace and liberation. When we stop fighting against who we are, we free ourselves from the exhausting cycle of constantly seeking approval or validation from others. We no longer feel the need to wear masks or pretend to be someone we're not. This freedom allows us to focus on what truly matters to us and to pursue our passions, goals, and relationships authentically. In this way, self-acceptance is not just about accepting our inner world, but also about aligning our actions and choices with who we genuinely are, which leads to a more fulfilling and meaningful life. Another important aspect of growth through self-acceptance is that it fosters resilience. Life is filled with challenges, disappointments, and setbacks. When we are rooted in self-acceptance, we're better able to navigate these difficult moments without being overwhelmed by self-doubt or despair. Self-acceptance reminds us that we are more than anyone experience failure or struggle. We are a complex, evolving mix of experiences and qualities, and one setback doesn't define us. This resilience allows us to face adversity with courage and bounce back more quickly because we know that our worth is not diminished by temporary challenges. Self-acceptance also enhances our relationships with others. When we accept ourselves, we're able to be more present, open, and authentic with those around us. We're less likely to engage in comparison or judgment, and more likely to approach others with compassion and empathy. Accepting ourselves gives us the capacity to accept others as they are without trying to change them or hold them to unrealistic standards. This creates deeper, more meaningful connections based on mutual respect and understanding. By being honest and accepting of our own imperfections, we invite others to do the same, fostering a culture of acceptance and authenticity in our relationships. Growth through self-acceptance is a journey that requires patience and self-compassion. Society often rewards quick results and visible achievements, but personal growth is rarely linear or easy to measure. It's a process of continual self-reflection, learning, and evolving. There will be days when self-acceptance feels natural and others when old insecurities resurface. These fluctuations are a normal part of the journey, and each step, whether forward or backward, offers valuable insights. Growth through self-acceptance isn't about reaching a final destination where we're perfect and content with every aspect of ourselves. It's about making peace with the fact that we are always a work in progress and finding joy and meaning in that process. Moreover, self-acceptance enables us to redefine success on our own terms. Rather than measuring our worth by external standards, we begin to create a sense of fulfillment and achievement that aligns with our values and priorities. We can focus on goals that feel meaningful to us rather than chasing after what we think we should accomplish. This shift allows us to pursue personal growth in a way that's deeply satisfying because it's rooted in our own sense of purpose and authenticity. Success then becomes less about perfection or recognition and more about living in a way that feels true to ourselves. Ultimately, growth through self-acceptance is about embracing all parts of ourselves, the messy, complicated, imperfect, and beautiful aspects. It's about learning to love ourselves not in spite of our flaws, but because of our wholeness as human beings. It's a journey of acknowledging our struggles and imperfections with compassion and celebrating our unique qualities and potential. When we approach life from this place of self-acceptance, we become more courageous, resilient, and open to new experiences. In the end, growth through self-acceptance transforms how we view ourselves, our lives, and the world around us. It frees us from the limitations of self-doubt and the pressure to conform, allowing us to live more fully and intentionally. Through self-acceptance, we build a foundation of inner peace and self-worth that supports us in all areas of life. A lifelong journey is a concept that speaks to the idea of growth, self-discovery, and continuous learning that unfolds throughout our lives. Many people think of personal development as a goal to achieve, a place we eventually reach where we are finished or complete. However, life is dynamic and ever evolving, and so are we. A lifelong journey means understanding that every experience, person we meet, and lesson we learn contributes to our growth, but there's no final endpoint. Instead, our journey is an ongoing process of uncovering layers of who we are, adjusting to new circumstances, and finding meaning in each step. Each phase of life brings new challenges and opportunities for growth. Childhood, for example, is a time of discovery, exploration, and wonder. As children, we're curious about everything, seeing the world as a place full of possibilities. This early stage is all about building foundational skills like learning to communicate, make friends, and understand ourselves within the family and community. But as we grow, new stages come with fresh questions and complexities. Adolescence brings a search for identity, a time when we start to ask ourselves who we are apart from our families and where we fit in the world. The desire to find our unique voice and navigate social dynamics can be both exhilarating and confusing. For many, these years are filled with exploration and experimentation as we try on different identities, form friendships, and begin to understand our personal values. As we move into adulthood, our journey often focuses on establishing careers, relationships, and routines. Many people view this period as one of settling down, yet even here, growth and change are constant. Our 20s and 30s can bring an intense period of goal setting, driven by ambitions in work and personal life. However, it's also a time when we may experience self-doubt and uncertainty, questioning if we're on the right path. Career changes, relationship challenges, and life transitions remind us that our journey is not linear, and what we thought we wanted might shift over time. For some, this is when we truly begin to understand that life's journey is filled with unexpected twists and turns, each one offering new insights and perspectives that we could not have anticipated. In the middle stages of life, many people find themselves at a crossroads, often referred to as a midlife crisis, though it's more accurately a period of reevaluation and self-reflection. Having accomplished or experienced many of the goals that once seemed so important, we might find ourselves asking deeper questions about purpose and fulfillment. This can be a time of profound growth as we re-examine our values, release old expectations, and make peace with the paths we didn't take. We might pivot in our careers, explore new passions, or let go of relationships that no longer serve us. This stage is often about realizing that success and happiness aren't always what we thought they were, and embracing the idea that our journey can look different from what we once imagined. Later in life, the journey continues as we enter a period of reflection and legacy. Many people find themselves contemplating the meaning of their lives, the impact they've had on others, and the memories they've made. This stage can bring a sense of peace and acceptance as we look back on our lives with appreciation for the lessons learned, both in moments of joy and in times of struggle. However, this isn't a time to stop growing. Many older adults find renewed purpose in sharing their experiences, mentoring others, or exploring passions that may have been set aside in earlier years. The lifelong journey remains alive as we continue to learn from the world around us and find ways to contribute to it. What's important to remember in this journey is that growth doesn't always come from big events or grand accomplishments. Often it's the small, everyday moments that shape who we are. Conversations with loved ones, quiet moments of reflection, and the routines we develop contribute to our evolving sense of self. Life's journey is not always about becoming someone new, but about uncovering deeper aspects of who we already are. As we navigate challenges and moments of joy, we learn more about our resilience, our values, and our capacity for love and empathy. On a lifelong journey, there is also no one-size-fits-all approach. Each person's path is unique, influenced by their individual experiences, dreams, and circumstances. Some may find purpose in family, others in career, art, spirituality, or service to others. There's no right or wrong way to journey through life, only the need to be true to oneself and to seek what brings a sense of fulfillment and joy. This understanding allows us to embrace our own paths with acceptance and curiosity, free from the pressure to meet society's expectations or follow someone else's script. The journey is also about learning to let go of the need for perfection. Many of us feel pressure to achieve certain milestones or live up to certain ideals, but life is rarely neat and tidy. Mistakes and failures are not detours, they are an essential part of the journey, teaching us resilience and humility. Learning to see these experiences as valuable lessons rather than setbacks helps us navigate life with a sense of grace